ago, we still had the politicians providing lip service to the issue. They're not even providing lip service anymore. I mean, the reports, if you look at all the reports that are being published, they're showing that the situation gets worse and worse and worse. And, you know, it is a hard fact that nothing is being done. Absolutely nothing. And it's perhaps good that even the lip service was dropped because now, just like we've heard, you know, from Daniela, young people get up and say, I want to do something. I can't stand it anymore. And this is what we're in need of. There is a need for a groundswell of young people who are standing up and saying, I'm fed up. Yeah, that's a good idea to say that you're fed up, and maybe you want to protest. That's perhaps also a good idea. But hey, only by being fed up and protesting, you're not making any difference. And I think this is really where we need to have a wake-up call. If we are hoping the politicians are going to give the kickstart and are going to move into a high gear so that multinational corporations feel that it's a necessity to do it now and the time is right to do it, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen because a new generation is making it very clear that a different approach is necessary. I give just one small anecdotal example. You know, my book, The Blue Economy, is in 51 languages. And it is recommended in just about no university in Europe. Just about no university recommends it as reader. If you go to Latin America, 80% of the universities recommend it as reading material, 80%. So what has happened? Well, professors in Latin America tend to be a bit younger and a bit more ambitious and searching for more creative and innovative approaches, whereas the academia in Europe are much more conservative and are not embracing out-of-the-box ideas as being the ones that should be promoted. And if they're not coming from Harvard or from Stanford, then we should definitely not look at it too closely. So I think we're going through a fascinating experience where a growing number of young people are clearly keen to become the entrepreneurs, even to the point of saying we're not going to wait for the politicians to move. We're just going to move. And that is the most encouraging thing that I see happening the last 9-12 months. Related to, I think, illicit activities, and it is directly related to the sustainability. I mean, let's just be very straightforward. The gas guzzler, the energy guzzler, l'énergivore of the world today is the expansion of the internet, is IoT. I mean, when we're going to have 1 million IoT devices interconnected with antennas in 1 square kilometer, you can only imagine how many servers you keep on buzzing behind you in order to make that operate. And if this is going to go, I mean, I just want to give you the very simple image. If you have 1 million IoTs talking to each other in 1 square kilometer, we should not neglect the fact that all the data is going out of that 1 square kilometer, crossing the globe to a multiple set of servers continents away in order to come back to just not only take all the data, process all the data, but then also use quite often the data that has been collected for illegal purposes. And I'm not in the first place talking about drugs. I'm talking in the first place of data which is protected by consumer law. For example, medical data. I mean, there's an awful lot of medical data very freely processed through mobile phones, including the 5G, the 4G, and the 6G that is coming, that has no protection to the consumer. If a medical doctor prescribes on his iPad for a patient a prescription drug, and that prescription drug is immediately ordered by the medical doctor in the pharmacy locally, that can all be done by IoT, but it also means that the complete set of information is in the hands of third parties. And you don't know if that third party is a crook, or it is the Chinese government, or it is the American government, or it is the local, the local crook who is just trying to resell the information. We don't know. So there is no traceability today from consumer protection point of view, what is happening to my medical data. And we know it is being resold to insurance companies who just get it as bulk data and will never be accused of anything. But we know the system is not working right. So Li-Fi has the great opportunity that you can do your IoT very local, and that you do not need to have to go through a global network of IoT and a global server park in order to process the data. You could keep it local and thereby protect the consumer from critical information being shared. Now, why is the technology not being pushed? Particularly, it is a French technology. It was proven in France. It works extraordinarily well. Well, we sometimes need to ask ourselves the question, Carlos, why is an obvious business model not supplanting a business model that has a lot of questions? The issue is very simple, because today too many people are earning money, are getting commissions on data going over radio waves. I mean, Apple is the number one. Apple receives from the beginning a commission on the data transmitted over a radio wave, over a 5G or a 4G. And as a result, Apple is going to promote not only all the apps and all the IoT, but they're going to promote the 5G because they get a commission. Now, there's always someone who's going to disrupt the game. And, this is what many people have been waiting for. We forget that Wi-Fi existed 17 years before it got into a phone. And even everyone knew that Wi-Fi was an amazing breakthrough, but it was not applied because, the Qualcomms and the Ciscos were making too much money on the type of communication systems they had fixed into a firmware. Now, the Li-Fi game is finally getting torn apart. A couple of weeks ago, Oppo, the smartphone maker, the number 2 smartphone maker of China, has announced that in 2021, they're launching the first Li-Fi phone. So breakthrough, bingo. But the announcement was very remarkable, and it didn't hit any newspapers in Europe. But those who know China just a little bit know that this was a very big message to America. The operating platform for Oppo, for Li-Fi, is nothing less but Android. Yeah. Oh, I thought Google was not allowed to operate in China. Oh, no. Probably they got the security systems in place the Chinese want to have in place. And of course, that security system with a foreign player is very easy to control through a Li-Fi. So China, through Oppo and Uber and Android, decided to join hands and join in launching the technology in Shanghai in April 2021. Immediately, Samsung announced that they have already over 1,000 patents on Li-Fi in their portfolio. Interesting. So here I am in Japan, and one of my first meetings, I'm sitting together with some of the chief strategists of NTT, the Japanese national telecommunications company, and they're saying, well, we have decided, incidentally, a couple of weeks after the Chinese Oppo had made their announcement, we have decided that we will work on a national Li-Fi network. NTT is doing that. Who are the partners? Well, they're always the same partners that we know. It's not going to be SoftBank, because NTT is not being very keen on SoftBank being successful. So what we're seeing, Carlos, is a reshuffling of the technology platforms. And I must commend Christopher for having been the visionary and having accepted that even 3 years before anyone was talking about it, that he put it on the platform at the Zermatt Summit. And I must commend you, Carlos, because you were one of the very first ones to engage in the discussion, because you immediately saw what it meant. It meant a change of business model. Now, when you have a change of business model, you have a chance, as our Chinese friends are doing with Google and Android, you have a chance to rewrite the rules of the game. And one of the writing of the rules of the game is transparency, of course, and two, protection of the data. The Chinese don't want their data to leave the country through the existing phone networks. But when they get the guarantees and the technology allows them to insist on these guarantees, then we see a shift of power. In the bottom line is, it's a Samsung, Google, Oppo alliance against Apple. And that's fascinating. To share two specific experiences. As you know, I'm close to the Italian government, and we made an analysis of what did COVID do for the mafia. And no one likes to talk about it, and it doesn't hit the media, but I can tell you guys that the mafia has strengthened like never ever before since the Second World War, period. We see a fourth big family moving in very strongly, because when you do a confinement strategy based on tests which were never made to lock down a country, these tests were made for laboratories to identify snippets of viruses, not at all to decide to lock down a country. But if you then do decide to lock down a country and you create a whole set of impediments like night clocks and curfews, well, who do you think is going to go around it? The ones who should not be there at all in the first place. And so in Italy, we have, as member of parliament, one of the greatest experts with an alarming report of how confinement actually strengthens illegal trade and underground organizations. The second country that I have firsthand experience is Colombia. When Colombia decided to stop transport over the weekend from Thursday to Monday, basically they handed over the farmers to the mafia. Because if the farmer has done his harvest and the harvest cannot be delivered to Bogota, to whom do you turn? Well, you better turn over to someone who is going to get it to the market, because if it doesn't get to the market by Tuesday, it's rotten. And that means you lose your harvest. So what we have not very well understood is that one of the, I hope, unintended consequences of confinement is a dramatic strengthening of the mafia. And this is, you name it very gently, illicit trade. But, you know, when you are monitoring people to a distance of 1.5 meters and you're monitoring transport from one region to another, I mean, Argentina is the third case. You need permits to go from province to province. So who gets your goods from province to province when your truck driver can't do it? Well, we know who you turn to. So we have actually, with the COVID situation, have strengthened and have actually created a complete new platform for illicit trade and illicit activities. But we are to blame, because we have been putting up rules and regulations with very heavy fines. In Colombia, the fines go up to 2 salaries, 2 monthly salaries. That means what do? Do you risk the 2 salaries and lose them, or you risk a third of your salaries and you go to an illicit organization and they take care of it? And so I think we have forgotten that when we put in rules that are outrageously encroaching on the freedom of movement of people and the movement of goods, that illicit organizations will get in between. Let's not forget that in 1776, that the year that The Wealth of Nations was written by Adam Smith, was the year that the British Parliament imposed 100% tax on Swiss watches coming into the United Kingdom, 100%. So what did the Swiss do? Well, the Swiss, they smuggled it into the UK. It's very simple. They smuggled them in. And that was the basis of the insurance industry, because they were very quickly calculating that 1 out of the 10 smugglers was caught. So they just collected 10% of each watch sold, created a little insurance company, and if you got caught, you got reimbursed anyway. We have to realize that whenever there is an excessive action by government, and we are definitely excessively intervening in the private lives, in the transport and distribution, you are creating a platform for illicit trade to flourish beyond imagination. Well, Carlos, and to pick up on some of the previous observations also from Daniela, let's just realize that about 30–35% of all the plastic bags which are labeled biodegradable in Italy are not at all degradable. The mafia just put a stamp on there. I mean, it goes down all the way to the level of just a biodegradable bag. It's quite amazing how we have not been able to see through the system. And of course, one of the best ways to see through the system is to create what we call the local clusters. As some of you may know, I'm the chairman of the largest bioplastics company of Europe. I'm the chairman of Novamonde, and we're a vertically integrated company. That means we work with the farmers. So Daniela, we work directly with the farmers, and we transform directly from the farms in the region into the core ingredients to make the bioplastics within Italy. We got 5 factories now in Italy. We got 2 research centers in Italy. And the only way to overcome the situation of the illicit trade is indeed to create a value chain that is local. But it cannot be modeled along the traditional, the cheapest is the one that will win. Because if you are the cheapest, I mean, I just want to put it very bluntly, particularly to David. David, when the economic model is you are competing globally on being the cheapest, then you have to cheat. There's no other way. How am I going to beat the Bangladeshis, the Chinese, and the Brazilians when I'm not cheating in taxes, I'm not cheating on my raw materials, I'm not cheating on my laborers, and I'm cheating on the environment? I mean, we cannot uphold a solid social tissue. We cannot regenerate our ecosystems and then have to be forced to compete on price. So in Italy, basically our company today has about 60% of the market of bioplastics. Why? Because we're totally transparent. I mean, everyone knows the prices we pay for the vegetable oils to the Italian farmers, the prices we pay for the sugar beets. We make monomers out of sugar beets and out of thistle oils. We transform them into polymers, and then the polymers are transformed into higher value-added products, and we share a great value of that with the farmers. And when you have the sharing plus the transparency, then you stamp out illicit activities. You stamp them out. Why? Because everyone in the community is gaining. And this is where we have to go away from the traditional transactional deal, I buy, you sell, to a real system whereby you're creating not just the high efficiency by being the lowest in price and the greatest economy of scale, but you're creating resilience in the community. You're creating the common good. And that comes back to what Christopher is, of course, also insisting on from the beginning that I've met him. That is, we need to have the common good at the core of so many of our activities. And resilience is clearly including not subjecting yourself to illicit trade. I mean, that is part of the resilience of you as a community, because we know the moment that the community gives up that resilience to illicit activities, well, then your next generation is going to be part of whoever we know that is going to be part of. So my view is very clear. Transparency is one, but the second one is sharing. And then this is where some people insist on the sharing economy. It's not enough to merely close the loop and make certain there is no waste. That's not good enough. So our strategy in Italy has worked very well. And by the way, we have in this COVID year, I mean, you mentioned the Seychelles. Well, our company with 853 employees, guess what? We have not one COVID case in Italy, not one. And why? Because if you take your precautions and you do it in a transparent way, and when risks are occurred, then you just take action. And I think this is very important. We have this year, thanks to the situation with the COVID, quote unquote, because it's not really a thank you, that our productivity has increased because we had to, due to social distancing, we had to shift from 1 8-hour work shift to 2 6-hour work shift. And we increased our productivity. But we also were able to rethink how we are, amongst others, doing all our tests and labeling. But here is my final comment. Daniela, did you know that no chemical engineer in the world is taught at university how to design a polymer that degrades in the sun, in the soil, and in the sea? Because it's very clear that if you have a biodegradable plastic that is degrading in the soil thanks to the microorganisms in the soil, those microorganisms don't exist in the sea. And to me, it is quite shocking that the European Union has not even today defined what is biodegradation in the sea. I mean, Carlos, if the government is not setting standards, then it's very easy for, you know, the illicit trade to put on the wrong stamp because we have nothing to measure against. And this is perhaps the most important thing that governments have to do, is not rule social distancing by the meter and not stopping transportation from one province to the other. They have to set norms and a framework within which we can operate, because we need to be able to operate. But if our education system, as was mentioned before, doesn't even teach chemical engineers how to make a molecule that degrades in the sun, the sea, and the soil, then we're going to have plastic waste in our oceans for decades to come.